the sum of all wisdom with your host, Dr. Scott Cady. Like Loki says in the Avengers Infinity War, I bring glad tidings. And today, that means my conversation with the one and only Butch Norton. Butch has had a pretty incredible career as a drummer and percussionist, as well as a few pretty amazing failures along the way. And he's here today to tell us the details and shine a light on some of these extraordinary stories from a life lived in music. The conversation is about much more than music, though. It's really an invitation to rethink creativity itself, not as a search for perfection, but as a practice of paying close enough attention that something unexpected can emerge. Most people know Butch Norton as the drummer behind artists like Lucinda Williams and the Eels and Tracy Chapman and others. And that's certainly part of his story. And over the course of a career spanning 5 decades, he's toured the world, recorded landmark albums, and built a reputation as one of the most thoughtful percussionists working today. But that description really barely scratches the surface. Spend an hour with Butch and you'll quickly discover that he isn't simply interested in playing drums. He's interested in how rhythm shapes attention, how musicians learn to listen to one another, and how creativity emerges when ego gives way to curiosity. His world stretches far beyond the drum set into yoga studios, modern dance classes, found percussion, world music traditions, improvisation, and the surprising ways that our bodies synchronize with one another through sound and movement. What emerges from our conversation, I think, is a portrait of a master craftsman whose deepest lesson isn't about percussion specifically, but how to live in the world. Again and again, Butch returns to a few pretty straightforward ideas. Listen, pay attention, stay curious, and try something new. Whether he's accompanying a modern dance class, laying down an awesome groove for Lucinda Williams, or building an instrument from an old heating duct, his work reflects a lifelong commitment to experimentation, generosity, and service. I hope you enjoy my conversation today with Butch Norton. Thought we might start with just a sort of, who are you, the basics? Where'd you come from? How'd you get into drums? I think it was early for you, and you were playing in nightclubs by the time you were 17. So feels like a very, I don't know what the word is. Like you got right on it as a young guy.
I did. I'm 68, born in 1958. So obviously I was banging on suitcases, pots and pans at 5 years old. And then, like everybody of my generation, my age, who was banging on things on Sunday night, Ed Sullivan, the Beatles, Ringo, that was it. I've been playing since I was 5 years old, much to the not chagrin, but just amazement at where did this come from? How no one in my family played a musical instrument. My mom was creative artistically, but up until probably, I'm 68, so probably up until 67 and a half, they finally have accepted that I am a drummer, percussionist, and that this thing's going to work out, I guess.
And there's no looking back.
No, well, there is a lot of looking back. There's a ton of looking back all the time. So I started, back when in grade school, they still had orchestras and band and choir. I went to public school I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s and 70s. Amazing time. And third grade, I got in the orchestra at school where you were given the Mel Bay books, how to, do a role. And my teacher, Mr. Eichhorn, was Julius Eichhorn, yes, who drove he drove a Citroen, and the most amazing car in the world. And he was a clarinet player, right? So he had to try to, in those days, whoever was the the guy at school that did run the music program had to play every instrument, and
Yeah,
they'll
right.
show you how to do it. So I started third grade, got in, and did that. There was a choir. I joined that. I was in, my parents took me, or didn't take me. They dropped me off at Episcopal Church when I was a kid, because that's what you did while my mom went shopping. My dad was tanning himself. And so I got in the choir at church and had some of that. And high school had a great band teacher, John Rando at Burlingame High School. I did all the theater choir in amongst me playing lots of sports until I hyperextended my right knee in my junior year and said, I'm going to be a drummer, not a football player. So,
Happy accident, right?
yeah, very much so. Because I'm a big guy and they wanted me to be on the defense. And yeah, I said, no, I'm going to play drums. And my coach just flipped out. He just, what? Okay. And then, yeah, started playing professionally at about 15, got in the union, local, what's San Francisco, local 6? I can't remember now. And started playing uh, uh, grad nights and proms and things with this 8-piece horn band I was in the Bay Area, played all the top 40 rock. It was a great way to cut your teeth, and we worked a lot. And then turned 18 and started playing bars and clubs, uh, 6 nights a week, 4.5 hours a night, 9 to 1:30, doing that, which is that world is gone now.
It sure is.
Yeah. But it was great learning then. And then that event, there's something, I hit 21 and I said, there's something more than just drum set. I know there's other stuff, and I had been hearing about it, and I'd seen percussion. I had dabbled in a couple things, but then I found this place, California Institute of the Arts, here in LA, out in Valencia, Walt Disney School. And there was one other degree granting institution of its kind that was strictly for the arts. I think that's Interlochen or something like that. But CalArts was the one on the West Coast, and got down here, got accepted, and studied 5 years with John Bergamo, my mentor, and didn't play drum set for 5 years. Went deep into percussion, and then met my wife. We're 43 years together. We met at school, and here I am, professional touring, recording musician in LA with a bunch of stuff that finally started happening around 90, 89, when the professional career of what I was trying to achieve started to happen.
And that was right off the bat. You're touring with.
I was working with a duo, Lowen and Navarro, uh, Dan Navarro, Eric Lowen. They had just written in 1987 a song called We Belong for this little artist known as Pat Benatar. And then they parlayed that into a duo career on triple A radio at the time, singer-songwriter stuff, 89 to about 94. And so I auditioned and got the gig with them, and that was my first time. 5 of us got in a record company van and went to their markets in Chicago, DC. Uh, and that was the beginning of, wow, okay. Loved it, and it was intense. It was a great time, and that was the beginning. And then from that, I left Lowen in Navarro and was playing with a bass player, David Sutton, in another band, and he met this guy. He was rehearsing with this guy who had a solo record, another AAA. At the end of the AAA time, it's 93. And I auditioned and got that gig for the E's last solo record, Broken Toy Shop. And we were getting ready to go on the road, and the record company dropped 25 acts. E was one of them, and they said, have a nice summer. And we went home in depression, never got to tour that record. But then out of that came E locked in his basement and came up with the Beautiful Freak record. he put all on ADATs, and he sent that to me and said, "What do you think about this?" And that's when he and I started the Eels.
So his demos coming out of his basement that he sent to you, it was him and a guitar and just the melodies, or and what?
No,
How did you guys put that together?
no, he was he was fully producing these tracks. The the uh, the record was all pretty much done when he sent it to me, and those ADATs that we put into Pro Tools and mixed with Mike Simpson from the Dust Brothers, a lot of it, and we recut maybe 3 or 4 of the songs on that first record, but he had those tracks done.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then, so that was the first record for the Eels. The second record that came out, Electroshock
Electroshock Blues.
Blues. Great record. That's of the Eels catalog. I think that's my favorite. Hospital Food knocks me out every time.
The drum track and the conversation, if you listen to it really quickly, is me recording that drum track with 3 mics in E's basement in Echo Park during the Beautiful Freak years. So that he held on to that track until we got to Electroshock Blues, and yeah.
That's a really productive in terms of production of creating this record, that's a really interesting sort of set of dynamics, right? You guys interacting together like that.
Well, yes, very, very much so. He's a persnickety guy, and everything is scrutinized and goes through his vision. That's what that was all about.
How do you, what's my question here? I want to, what do you think of yourself as, Butch? Are you a support for artists like E and Lucinda Williams and others? Are you a band member? Are you a sideman? How do you characterize yourself in these circumstances?
Very good question. I everything I do is to be of service with what and who I am and what I bring. What what do you need? What do you need from me? What can I do to make this project, this music, this situation the best that it can be, utilizing my ideas and my abilities. It's funny you asked that question, because Tommy, the bass player in the Eels, who we fired after the Beautiful Freak record, his thing was, we're a band, and it's like, well, no, this is E's baby. We join because of our abilities and personalities and talents here, and yes, we are technically a band, but we didn't grow up as a band. He never could understand that, and he was always frustrated that we wouldn't. Right after as things started going, Tommy and he pushed us into the background and only did the interviews. And I was fine with that. That this is his, and Tommy just could not. Why is he getting the attention? Why? And it's like, dude, like, that's not what this is. With Lucinda, with whoever, there was a time where after the second Lucinda record I did, or actually after the first, Little Honey, we were in the studio at the Village here in LA working for about a month and a half on this record, Little Honey, and Lucinda notoriously would not show up until 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And we would be there in the afternoons ready to work. And so we would start playing, the band, the musicians, Doug, David, and myself, we would improvise and jam. And Lucinda's husband manager heard came in early one day and heard us doing these instrumentals. He said, "You guys should make your own record." So when we had time during the day, we made our own record. We called the band Buick Six, and we became Lucinda's opening band, Lucinda Williams and Buick Six. And she allowed us to, we opened for her for about 3 years, and we did about 3 records. It was amazing. So there was this band inside. So we got to do 30 minutes every night opening for her. So we'd be all warmed up, and then we would be her, do her show.
Band, yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
it was very awesome.
It's got to be unique in the sort of annals of rock and roll for that sort of thing to happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has happened. I don't know if there's an entity. It was a great idea, and we made our own CDs, and her fans bought lots of those CDs. It was a nice little extra side cash on the road during those times.
How so musically is the vibe similar to her work, or what were you guys up to?
No,
Buick Six.
no, it was instrumental. Yeah, it was all instrumental. You can find Buick Six records on the Spotify and all that. Much more kind of groove oriented, not so much not song oriented, which was nice. A nice for us to open instrumentally and do these kind of rock, funk, soulish type of instrumental songs, and then Lou comes up with the Americana singer-songwriter, that's her thing.
Good marriage, though, right? Between your vibe and
It was great. Yeah, it was great. And then that ran its course, and now it's just Lucinda Williams and her band, and the guys in the band and all that.
and it's still you guys.
It's not me. I left 2 years ago.
Oh, did you? I see.
Yeah, I had my we were on tour. My left hip was bone on bone. I was in excruciating pain. Thankfully, it was my left hip, my hi-hat hip, so it was doable. And we were in Europe in January, February. We were in the UK at the coldest time of the year, grayest. I'm in pain. We're at Abbey Road Studios recording in Studio 2. Lucinda sings the Beatles for 3 days, and then we went on tour. And I said after the tour, I need to take a break. I got to get my hip fixed, and it was the right time. 17 straight years recording and touring with her since 2007 up to 2024. So got the hip done, took care of Dad, went on an adult vacation with Mrs. Butch, which we hadn't done in 12 years. And then it was just, yeah. They got a great replacement, Brady Blade. The machine was moving well, and we both said, yeah, great, I'm going to move on. So that's what we did.
I want to know about the hip, Butch. How are you doing with that?
Oh, fantastic. Oh, yeah.
Replacement?
Yes, replacement. Oh, yeah. With the anterior went in the front, which is the latest thing. I was checked out a number of surgeons, found a great surgeon that was right for me. Had worked with other musicians, and knew about my drumming. And I was 6 weeks after the surgery, I was playing again, pain-free. I don't know. I talked to so many guys and gals who had bone on bone, and they said, "Oh yeah, I've had it for about 3 years." And I'm like, I had it for a month and a half. And I was like, how could you go 3 years with that pain? No.
Did it come from drumming? You said it was your hi-hat leg. Is it because of...
Yeah. No. I mean, my genetics also. My mom had both her hips and knees replaced. I'm knocking on wood. I just have one hip. Let's just stay with that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I do Pilates. I walk. We just put an in-ground pool here at the house, so I'm swimming every day. I uh, I I go the extra mile at my stage. I want to keep going until I die on the drum set. Okay, that's how it's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. I like that. The swimming is so good for every muscle group, right? So, let me circle back on a little bit on your, I guess, your upbringing. In San Francisco, you studied with some pretty well-known percussionists of the era, right?
Anthony Cerrone and Charles Dowd, uh, and a number of their proteges at that time. And there was a guy by the name of Scott Morris, who was an amazing drum set player, played with Benny Goodman. Yeah.
Remarkable. How
hmm
did you get hooked up with these guys?
I searched them out. Hey, I want to study. Um, with Scott Moore, it started with Scott Morris and a friend of his, Jim Spellman. Uh, in the Bay Area at the time, San Jose State University was had a great reputation for percussion, and Anthony Cerrone was the head professor. He was the timpanist in the San Francisco Symphony. And so I met him via a summer program at Notre Dame High School. They would have an arts, a music camp, 2 weeks. And one summer I went, and Anthony Cerrone was head of the percussion. Charles Dowd, who wrote this very well known book called The Funky Primer for drum set players in the 70s. All of us studied out of that book, along with the Ted Reed syncopation and all the basic books. But for drum set, that was the Funky Primer was at that time the Bible, and I was way into David Garibaldi, Tower of Power, and in the Bay Area all the funk and soul. So I was playing a lot of that. So this summer I go to the music camp, and I take private lessons with Anthony and with Charles Dowd. Uh, and uh, and Anthony Cerrone wrote this book called Portraits in Rhythm, a snare drum etude book.
It's a great title. Snare
Yes.
drum etudes. You just don't think of snare drums as an etude instrument, right?
Oh, oh, yeah. Well, in percussion world, this was the Bible for snare drum etudes. It came out, I think, in the mid 60s is when it first came out, and it was you if you were going to do snare drum, you learned this book. I went through a couple of the first etudes with Jim Spellman, who had studied with Cerrone when he was younger. So I went. So the funny part of the story, not funny really, but kind of funny. My first lesson with Anthony Cerrone, he says, I bring the Portraits in Rhythm, and he goes, "Oh, great, you've been studying my book." I said, "Oh, of course, yes, I've been playing." And he goes, "Great, let's start with Etude number one." So we open the book, put Etude number one, 1, 2, 3. He stops me after 2 bars and goes, "No, no. We spent a week and a half on 2 bars, two bars that I never was able to get." Yeah. And Anthony he said, "Oh, you're a rock drummer." I said, "Yeah, yeah, a rock drummer. I've played in orchestra, in school, and I did in high school." And he goes, "Yeah, okay." So, he got it. And then he said, "Well, let's try some mallet stuff. Let's just two mallets. Let's go over to the marimba." And I could do some scales, and we did some beginning, very simple Bach, which uh, which I, no, which no, not really, not so much. But then at the same time, now while I'm doing this summer, I'm working at night with my pop rock band in the bars.
Mm-hmm.
So so I was not a good student. I was not, and I went and I soaked as much as I could in, but I also took this class on cymbals on the Piatti from this 85-year-old San Francisco Symphony legend, Joe Saina. And his class was at 8:30 in the morning.
That's hard to get to after playing in the clubs.
Oh, yeah, worked until 2:30 and then going to Denny's and at 3:30 and yeah, doing that and doing other extracurricular things at that time. Uh I I caught a couple classes, I got some techniques, and then at the end of the 2 weeks, there's a concert, right? It's the culmination of the 2 weeks. And they said, Butch, you're going to play the cymbals for this famous Tchaikovsky piece. And I'm like, okay, great, sure. And the piece is a it's a master class in simple Piatti. You have suspended cymbals. You have two or three different sizes of the Piatti of the cracked cymbals, and it's super technical. And so I we do the concert, and at the end of the performance, I'm outside. My mom is there, and Anthony Cerrone comes up, and I go, "Oh, Mom, this is Anthony Cerrone." And Anthony goes, "Oh, hey, your son. I see a bright future for him in playing, drum set and doing rock music." And my mom was, "Oh, thank you. Butch had a great time here." All of a sudden, from across the room, Joe Sinai comes running in, screaming, "You can never play cymbals again! You murdered that! You should never touch cymbals! Never, ever! Don't you ever come near cymbals! Don't ever see me!" And Anthony Cerrone stops Joe and says, "Joe, Joe, Joe, whoa, little Italian guy." He goes, "Yeah, Butch kind of mangled that piece, but it wasn't horrible." He goes, "No, that was horrible." And my mom's standing there, and Anthony goes, "Joe, Joe, 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 let's take a deep breath here. This is Butch's mom, and Butch is going to follow a different path. He's a drum set player, plays rock and pop. You can't take it." Joe goes, "Ah." He walked away disgusted. That was my end of my summer camp that year.
Your classical training, as it were.
Yes. Uh, but then 2 years later, I went and auditioned at California Institute of the Arts. And I asked Anthony Cerrone if he would write a recommendation letter. And he said, of course. And he wrote a very, very simple, very nice, very nice letter that helped get me to CalArts, where in the youth orchestra, I was the timpanist. And Cesare Pasquarella was the conductor, and it was great. I learned a lot. I really worked on that, on the timpani.
What was the audition like for CalArts, Butch? What did they have you do?
Well, CalArts is a degree granting institute that was Walt Disney's dream to put together. He took the LA Conservatory and the Chenard Art Institute and combined them and moved them out to Valencia in 1970, built this beautiful campus that's just theater, animation, dance, music, visual art, critical studies, which is writing. It's all the arts, and that's all you did. Yeah, and you got pass, high pass, or fail for classes. It was about working with other artists. It was magical time. Uh, uh, I was in the percussion program, and like I said, I stopped playing kit for about 5 years. I went deep into percussion, improvisation, Indian music. I studied tablas for about 2 years, African music, Balinese, Javanese, and I worked mostly with movement, with dancers, a lot, which I still do to this day. And that's how I met my wife. We wrote some pieces together. She's a classical pianist composer at the time. And yeah, which all of that improvisation with movement and dance has shaped my crazy percussion world. And John Bergamo with the new music, John Cage and the Harry Partch and the Found Sound.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
he really exploded my mind about, everything is, any sound can be utilized as a source, an instrument, and how do you tame it? How do you put it somewhere? How do you make it work? And that's been a lifelong uh, journey for me.
I think this trajectory of Parch and Cage and Bergamo and you, right? I talked to Jeff Tripoli recently, he talks about you as his mentor. And part of the interesting part of that conversation, and what I'm hearing from you, Butch, not the only interesting part, but one of the interesting parts, is this legacy of learning and the transmission of ideas across generations. I think that's really, I don't know, it just strikes me as something really unique to musicians to pass along that kind of thing, and to think outside of those boxes like Parch did and Cage did and you do, and then passing that along to someone like Jeff, who has grown, it seems to me, really a lot in the years that he's known you. I think that strikes me as a really compelling piece of what it is that this is all about.
It is. Well, it is what it is all about, and what you're doing, and introducing me to people that are not aware of this, and this this is what was passed on to me. So now I'm passing it on, and Jeff will pass it on. Uh, you know, whatever endeavor you're in, you should be doing that. That's how
Right.
I've always
Yeah.
viewed it.
Working with others, right? This thing you were trained to do at CalArts, working with other artists. That's what you did with E and the guys at Eels, and that's what you did with Lucinda and the rest of them. This is sort of a consistent through line that I hear from you. It's like working with others is really important, right? So what does that
Yeah,
entail? Listening, for one thing, right?
lots of listening, lots of shutting up, lots of deciphering, lots of communicating, and throwing things back and forth, and taking your ego out of things, and experimenting, failing, and then when that happens, something magical, it always happens, something magically pops up that you're like, oh, gonna use that, okay.
Didn't plan on it. Didn't see that
Yeah,
coming. But God damn it, that
right.
worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Failure. It's funny that you say that. This has somehow turned into a theme for several of my episodes, right? Like I told a guy recently, it's like, I don't want to fail, but fuck, I learn a lot when I do. And it happens more than I'd like to admit, probably, but that's okay.
It is okay. I mean, you talking to anybody, everybody's got the failures, and
That's right.
it's how you come out of that, and how you handle it in the moment, and
Mm,
don't go off and shut down. That's the thing.
the
Don't
ego part,
no
right? You got to keep the ego out of it.
Yeah, and just and be understand that, uh, shut up. You're not the only one that's had this fucking problems, okay? Everybody's got these. Come on.
Yeah,
Geez,
exactly.
look at the world. Let's go, people.
I want to hear you talk more about this. Fascinates me, Butch. I got to tell you, reading the bio content and some of the other things that are on your website, your work with body movement. It. I mean, I can see there's a natural relationship between rhythm and movement, obviously, right? And the way that we breathe, and the way that the heart beats, and the way that we walk, and all these things. But the relationship that you seem to really participate in is, I don't know, it's richer than just, oh yes, there's a cadence to the way we walk. Tell me how you get into doing your work with in terms of body movement.
Well, it started at CalArts. Well, no, it started before that. It, uh, it started from the beginning, really, if I think about it. I mean, to me, a drummer, m- from when I first started playing drum sets, seeing people in a room and you start playing a song and they start moving, and I recognized body movement, and I recognized the James Brown and then the Beatles, yes, but the soul, the black soul music and the African rhythms and how this connected in jazz, uh, I've had a fascination with, but not so much to play or be a part of, because it's all, for me, the avant-garde, the bebop, there's it's all, the movement is not steady. I go towards more African, uh solid, uh groove, always been about the groove and setting down a groove and getting people to move,
Mm.
right? And then I got to CalArts, and from dance, drumming, and pop stuff, and getting people in clubs that get up and they start dancing, that I would lock into. Now I go to CalArts. I'm not doing drum set anymore. Now I'm accompanying modern dance classes. And that became like, whoa. I first sat in on a modern dance class, and the dancer instructor is now doing combinations with the dancers across the floor, right? First, you have a warm up, they do stretching, and you improvise and lay down a groove that the dancer will start a tempo that they can move to. And you set it, boom, go back it, good boom, go back it. And you do that for about 20 minutes and you don't change. You lock into that pattern, that rhythm, to give them something that uh, doesn't change, and so that their not body isn't jerking. There's a certain kind of smoothness, a connection. So I started realizing that. And then the next part of the class is they do combinations. Like the dancers will go across doing arabesques and jumps and things, and the instructor choreographs this to help their technique, right? And those things are like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you would do that while the dancers learned the combinations, that little dance. They would go in groups, they would go across the floor, and then boom, we move on to the next uh, instruction, the next piece for them to learn their technique. And so I started learning how to put combinations now of different meters and different time signatures. There's no rules. And how do you connect the percussion, the groove with, and help? The dancers would jump, and you would do a symbol at the jump, and you would, okay, so now I'm composing, helping, giving them cues with drumming with my instruments. The next piece would be, okay, everything's in 5 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we would do 11s. We would do, it was uh, amazing. And I'm still 43 years later. I'm still, next week. My one of my close friends is from college. We still do modern dance classes together.
It sounds very organic, right? So there's a real relationship, a sort of DNA between you and the dancers, as you change, they change kind of thing.
Yes. And then all at the same time, it comes back to me being of service. You know, you know, I'm there, and there's a dynamic. You can't just flail, and you have to rein in your dynamics. You have to have the right. The teacher will once in a while say, "Oh, let's slow this down a little bit." It's like, "Oh, okay, okay, yeah, I see the movements. We're pushing them a little too hard, or now pick up the pace. We need to pick this up." You're there to be of service.
Tell people who are listening to this episode, Butch, counting 11s, and dancing 11s, how does that work?
You have to see the movement. It's usually an 11 will be a 3 and an 8, or a 5 and a 6. The teacher will go, okay, right, left, left, right, left, right, and then, but then on top with their body, they're turning, they're moving, and you're watching this. And every time you go through the combination, you pick up a little more oh, okay, well, how can I help accompany this movement to help them get their movement quicker, and how are this is it going to feel right for them? Common is 6 and 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 8 and 3 is a common one too. It that the beauty of it, it changes every time, and so you have to be, and thankfully for all the many years and working with my buddy Ray, he and I are like this. So we think the same, and we know where we're going intuitively.
So I wonder, Butch, so this is modern dance. You're working directly with dancers specifically. When you're touring with Lucinda, for instance, and you're rock and roll drumming, basically, or Americana drumming, what's the relationship between you and folks who are dancing in that kind of setting?
It's the same. I'm all I'm thinking about is, well, with Lucinda, with the singer-songwriter, I am going off the cadence for her of her voice and her lyrics. It's about her lyrics. The When I first started, um, the drummer before me, Don Heffington, I went into the gig, and he had a monitor system. He had her guitar in one monitor and her voice in another monitor, right? So he had them separated. And the first couple gigs, I was like, wait, where do I follow? Because her guitar playing is not in time with her singing, which was the beauty of Lou. She can't play guitar anymore after stroke. But the beauty of it was this weird, where she just had this pocket that was wild. I had to turn off her guitar for me to sit in the right pocket with her songs. It was the time to play with accompanying was her voice. So that was the first step. And then as usual, it was like I feel the audience. I'm looking out at the audience. I'm seeing where we're moving. If it's a ballad, they're not moving, that's good. They're getting deep into the song. A million synapses are going off, and all these things in the computer of Butch head is trying to keep it steady, and with the singer songwriter, and then which applies to the modern dance. And then also this weekend I accompany yoga classes, which is a whole different kind of thing.
That's really interesting. Tell me more about that. How do you accompany a yoga class?
It's all about vibe. I work with a couple teachers, one in particular, Joe Cara, who I've worked with for many, many years. There's an ebb and a flow. It starts off with quiet breathing, and we open up with just bowls and long metal sounds and light sounds. This is how it's constructed. And then he'll do 4 ohms with the class, and that's the beginning of movement. And we strike a gong, and then we go into just soft groove while he goes through the movements and the stretching. And then I know when you're coming back into down dog. They're taking a breath. They're going to take a break. So we close, and then he starts the next movement, and I start a pattern or a groove, and it goes like that. It's an hour and a half class, and I've been doing these yoga classes for about 30 years.
Fascinating. The ethos of the yoga, and I mean it's broader than yoga, but that sense of put away the ego and sort of don't worry about borders and don't worry about formulas, that sort of thing, right? This idea of being in the world and being of the world and being accepting of the world as it comes to you seems to be Like, it's not just a yoga thing. This is kind of what I'm seeing on your website and what you're telling me about your own evolution as a percussionist. And that seems to me like a really it's also, you are explicit to some of this on your website with the ideas that you hold to be important, right? Your I don't want to call them mantras. I don't want to put that word in your mouth, Butch, but I read them as very important pieces of, let's say, wisdom that you put out there for what you believe in. I think it's for me, it's really lovely.
Or have you been on the YouTube playlist, the Butch Musings?
I have seen your bunker materials, but I don't think I've seen your musings yet, Butch.
Okay.
Give me a musing. Tell me what a musing looks like.
Well, uh, I have a list. I started this after the pandemic. I have a list of about 100 and it grows every couple of weeks. I'll meet a new drummer, about 120 drummers all over the world who I've run into, become friends with. And I started this thing, which was an offshoot of Creative Ideas from the Butch Bunker,
Mm.
which is a playlist on my YouTube channel. It has over about 550 videos that I did mostly in my mom's living room during the pandemic when she had just had surgery. And I would go down to San Diego and I would bring a pile of stuff and I would improvise in her living room, which she loved recuperating in her family room. So and I came up with all these wild improvisational minute and a half things with different instruments and stuff. So the Butch Musings after the pandemic, I started doing stuff out of the Butch Bunker, playing different things, and then musing, and then I would write, and it's there if you look in the description, I have thoughts. Butch has many thoughts, and so they're not all about drumming. It's not all about drumming, but it's me kind of jumping off of the drumming and talking about life stuff and uh, ideas and why I came up with why I did what I just did. Here's my description of why I did what I just did and how maybe you can apply that. And so it's Butch Musings. Yeah, I put them out every week or so, every week and a half.
I'll definitely link that in the show notes, Butch. But tell me, what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite? What's the kind of idea that you love to talk about for a musing?
Oh, well, the central, I think, theme for me is I will find a song or some music that uh, inspires me, and it's usually and a lot of it is stuff that you normally don't hear. I like to find the odd and obscure. Uh, a lot of many of the musings are things you would not think Butch would play, and then for me, I come up with my own ideas playing, which are not necessarily the ideas that are on the original music. And for me, the crux of this is me saying, you know, great, learn the part of the song or learn if you need to learn this, but then go beyond that and put your own spin on it. Do something that's completely different than what is the original and make it work. That's really mostly my message is you know make find other things within this that you can create from.
That's pretty inspirational, I think, for damn near anybody who's, maybe stuck in the idea of what am I doing here? How do I do this? How do I grow? I'm bored. I don't know how to practice differently. All these questions that we come up against as musicians who are, in the world and maybe hitting some kind of block or obstacle or other thing that we let get in our way, right? So
Well,
lightning
and then
strike, do it differently, I think is important.
very important, and also to I espouse about taking in your practice sessions. Okay, practice those rudiments, the beginning stuff, great, but don't just do that. Get out of your normal patterns. Take some time, a half an hour of within your practice or whenever, and don't do the same things over and over and over and over. I know many guys that just keep playing the same stuff over and over and over and over. Break out of that.
I totally agree with that, Butch. When I was doing music, it was a lot of practice was rote. You just did these same things. Often it was scales. Scales obviously are important, but sometimes you've got to get away from that and you've got to do something else. And I was training to be a vocalist, so I did a lot of operatic stuff and choral training, right? And those practice sessions turned into basically it's the same thing every day or every week when we meet. And it gets so, I mean, God help me, boring at times. Like I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So the invitation to try something different, I think, is like, oh, I could have had a V8, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I say. You could have had a V8. What's up with that? For your younger fans, look that up. V8, okay?
One of my favorite things on your website is entrainment. This is an idea that I love. I want to hear you talk about it, Butch. Tell me how entrainment lands on you.
Well, it came from Mickey Hart's book, his first book, the magic book of percussion. I can't think of the title right at the moment. I see it. He talks about this in the 1500s. There's a scientist, Huygens, over in Europe, who just came up with the discovery of entrainment, and it was all because of clocks, pendulums. He'd walk by the clockmaker, and he would see all the pendulums going on the clocks, and he went, wait a minute, what if he put two clocks together in proximity of each other, and he started noticing that the pendulums would eventually line up, and he called this entrainment. And he said this phenomenon of entrainment. You take a baby, put the baby on the mother's chest lying there, and the hearts will entrain. They will sync up. They will just automatically line up. And that's this concept of entrainment. And as it applies to drumming and rhythm, you're always trying to attain this place of entrainment when you're working with musicians in anything in life. When shit ain't lined up, right? It's like, boom, this is not in training. This is not working. We need to take another path here. And then there's people, I'll come into a room for the first time with some musicians, and boom, it's like, we're not thinking. Somebody makes a twist or a turn musically, and everybody's right there entrained, going in that same direction. So the ever since I read that book and thinking about this entrainment, it's I'm very aware of it.
It would seem to be like a important part of your work with dancers, for one thing, but also coming from Mickey Hart, like that makes sense for a jam band. You gotta be entrained to do what they did.
Oh my God. Yeah, or just and I've been in rooms with musicians. I've gone to see shows, and I'll leave after 10 minutes because this is not in training. People are just going off doing their own thing. It's a train wreck, and it's hurting my soul. And and I feel I'll never forget. I went to see the Tommy Bolin band open for the Jefferson Starship at Winterland in San Francisco. I had just got my driver's license.
Jesus, you were there in that moment, Butch.
I was there. No, I was there. And Tommy Bolin, who had just done the Billy Cobham record and was, he was the rock guitar god at that time, had this amazing band. And it was the loudest thing, the loudest I've never even since heard anything louder or more painfully louder than this show. And it was so loud, and Tommy was not listening to the rest of the band and just screaming on guitar, and people were going crazy for him. It just, I started vomiting during the show because it affected me that way. It was not, something was wrong. I had to leave, and it was an entrainment thing. That's how I always viewed it. It just, it was not clicking. Plus the 7 beers I had, I think that might have had, at 15 and a half, it was not.
It couldn't have anything to do with that. Beer is healthy. But I think the embodiment, the sense that entrainment actually has some effect. It's not just nice that your hearts beat together, mother and child, but there's actually something much more sort of, I don't know, physical or material actually happening that comes out of that, right? And that can convey to other bodies next to you.
Well, it is when I play pop, funk stuff, it's immediate. When like I said, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to connect with people is this entrainment. Can I help you get there? Can you come with me and lock into what I'm doing? I'm not I can do a lot of technical flashy stuff, but to me, the important thing is this laying this great foundation that moves you, that you can feel.
Where does it come from, Butch? How do you, Butch Norton, get the groove going?
It's just in me. I've got the music in me, Elton John. Thank you. And Kiki D. I'm ready to go right now. I was playing right before we started up here. I was working on some. It's a definite sickness. It's a real problem.
I know you left your studio to come over to get the better connection over here, Butch, but any chance you'd walk us back and demo something for us? I'd love to hear what you're up to.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's see if the craziness in the studio works. Hold on here.
I like that. That's good, Butch.
This is it's a very bizarre setup of percussion-y. This is a heating duct drum. Okay.
You made that yourself?
I made this myself. I stole her from a construction site when I was 14 because I wanted to have North drums, and I couldn't afford them at the time. So yeah, I fabricated this drum.
Hit that for me. Let me hear that. Butch, do you mind?
No. It's a very thuddy sound, which I'm actually using more as a snare drum for me. Yeah.
Do you tune that like a snare?
No, it's completely. It's more like an African sogo. It's a type of tom-tom African. So I fashion it more towards that. This is custom-made rain stick. And the beauty of this is that at the top of this rain stick, hold on, that's my hip bone.
Oh my God, you're kidding. Fantastic.
Yeah, I had the surgeon give me my hip bone, and then one of my stick companies in Canada, I was going to make a mallet, and he said, no, we're going to make you a rain stick. And so he made me this rain stick with the head with my hip bone.
That walk me through that conversation with your doctor, Butch. That can't have been easy to convince him to give that up.
No, I was in the getting ready. They were proceeding to go into the operating theater, and I said, "Hey, doc, before we go in, I have a weird question." He goes, "What?" And I said, I want my hip bone." And he goes, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah, I want my hip bone. I'm a drummer. I'm going to make a mallet out of it." And he goes, "Yeah, I've got some other weird guys like you, because I have one guy who you put it on his stick shift of his car." And he goes, "I have another guy who put it on the head of his cane." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to make a mallet out of it, man." So it took a couple weeks to get it back from pathology, but yeah, I got it.
And they cleaned it all up for you? It was all just bone when you got it back?
Yeah. I couldn't get it immediately. It had to go to pathology, and they had to test. They had to cut it up a bit in three pieces to make sure that there's no infections or no diseases and all that. Yeah. And then I super glued it back together and found a company that made a lucite ball out of it.
And the guy in Canada was like, "Whatever, send us your bone. We'll make it into a rain stick."
Oh yeah, Dave Rundle his company's called Headhunters, okay, and Headhunters Creations in Toronto. Oh, he's the right guy. I said, "Oh, I'm getting my hip bone. I'm going to make a mallet." He's, "Oh yeah, we're going to make a mallet. Yeah, let's go." Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen 28 Years Later and the Bone follow-up. I forget, the Bone Theater, whatever the title is, with Ray Fiennes. Have you seen these films?
No.
You got to. You've got to see it with this story in mind. I have a vision in my head of your guy in Canada as Ray Fiennes doing the bone thing.
Oh, well, I can see it already. Yeah, no, he's a mad scientist, and
I love it.
His creations. These are called thunder sticks, and he has these wild creations of sticks and mallets.
Oh, that's a good sound. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he combines all. He's has a serious problem in a good way.
As do many, right?
Yeah.
So on your repurposed percussion videos,
Yes.
I really like the Salt of the Earth, the shaker that you have. That's, again, put that on a high gain microphone. I can hear it, right? What you're talking about with that. That's a really cool idea, using that. And the other pieces that you had on there, the shot pieces in the bottles as the maraca replacement, really fascinating stuff. Is this part of your day? You just wander around and think about stuff that's going to be new for me?
All the time. So I'll hear something, I'll see something, and I have a community of friends that are equally as disturbed as me, and we share and make things for each other and use them. There's a lot of that.
I want to ask you, Butch, about LA and San Francisco, right? These are iconic cities for music, for the industry, but also for like the sort of groundswell of stuff turning into what we recognize as folk and Americana and rock and roll and pop and all of that, really sourced out of those two cities in large part. And the cities for so many musicians you can't take them out of the evolution of the musician or of the music, right? So I'm thinking, for instance, of Tom Waits. And if you didn't have the Troubadour and the Tropicana and the Diner, you wouldn't have Tom Waits as we know him, in a sense, right? So LA is such an inhabitant, both of him and of his music. And I'm wondering, I get a sense that feels to me like it must be similar for you. Like the cities are so important to what you do. Am I on the track here? Tell me how the cities are for you.
No, you are correct. I was just reading something today of a buddy of mine in Nashville, a drummer, and and the world that is, and how that all works. You hit the nail on the head. Nashville does not work in LA. LA does not work in Nashville. Doing what I do, you have to be around I believe you have to be around a community of like-minded people. And if you're going to do country music, you go to Nashville. If you're going to do, jazz, you're going to go to New York. I mean, you can do jazz in other places, but if you're really if you want to be in that world, that's where you got to go. LA, you want to do more experimental, you want to do pop rock stuff. Come here. San Francisco, definitely more esoteric music. There's some great jazz coming out of there, and art, music, and very creative stuff. Yeah, where you are, where you live, and the community of people you surround yourself with.
I can feel it when I listen to the way that you talk and the way that you play on your videos. It feels to me like LA is in there for me. It's like I get a sense of the legacy of the city and all the music that's gone on there when I listen to you play.
Well, then my job is done. Thank you.
Listen, Butch, we've gone over an hour. I appreciate the time, but I want to respect that you've got other things going on in your life besides just chatting with me. But this has been wonderful. Thank you very much. And
you're welcome. My pleasure.
Parting gift, your piece of wisdom to impart to everybody.
What we talked about, the biggest thing I can impart is, don't get stuck in the same things over and over. Break out of your usual patterns, find some new patterns, experiment, and don't worry about, again, making mistakes, because again, mistakes turn into amazing things. Just break out of your normal patterns.
I think that's good advice. A good piece of wisdom, Butch.
Thank you. I'll tell my wife you said that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll, this guy knows what he's talking about too, right? He's a thing.
No. No. And I'll end with this. She won't, because right before I was playing, I was doing my chores. My wife has the full-time 9 to 5. I was doing my chores. I was washing dishes. And like the two of us, she does not know how to organize the dishwasher. And so I have to reorganize the dishwasher. And then she'll come home tonight and she will go, "What is wrong with the dishwasher?" Reorganized her way. And we play this little game. We go back and forth. It's beautiful. Yeah.
It sounds like a harmony, right? Entrainment around the dishwasher. You're going to figure it out.
Totally. But then it's the beautiful chaos. It's you open it, I open it up, and it's like, why would she do it like this? And then she opens it up and goes, why would he do it like this? Oh, it keeps us going. There we go.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Butch. I really appreciate it again for you being on here.
You're welcome. Thank you, Doctor.
Take care of yourself. See ya. And thank you for listening. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd invite you to continue exploring it. Visit thesumofallwisdom.com for show notes, essays, transcripts, field notes, and our listening rooms, where each conversation becomes part of a larger archive of musical craft and creative wisdom. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, following the show, leaving a review, or sharing it with someone who loves music and the people who make it. And check out our Patreon site, where you can help ensure that the Sum of All Wisdom is able to continue and flourish. For now, I'm Scott Cady. Remember to stay curious, listen deeply, and keep cultivating your perception. See you next time.